Okay, this is tutorial number 2 on JavaScript. In the previous tutorial, we looked at using the print statement to display a message on our web page. So we used the document.write method to print hello world to the screen. I just want to point out that we've got to close off with an angle bracket here after the HTML tag, which didn't mess up the file. It still ran as expected, but just make sure that you always close off your tags with the right brackets and in the right spot. So a typo there, shouldn't have had any problems with that file though, but just for future reference, make sure that you close off your tags with the angle brackets when you need to. Okay, another thing that I want to point out before we move on to variables and data types is how to check errors or check the errors in your JavaScript. So say for example that I typed in document.write, but I had a little typo and I put in 2 i's for the write method, so I spelt it wrong. Okay, and if I save that and went back to Chrome and refresh the page, I'll get an error there. I'll get an error. Basically, it doesn't understand what the write method is spelt with 2 i's. It doesn't exist. So it doesn't display anything there. So there's an error, but I don't know what the error is. If I didn't notice that typo, I wouldn't know what the error is. So in Chrome and all the other major browsers, there is a JavaScript console. So to get it in Chrome, you can either go onto your menu bar, click on Tools, and then JavaScript console, or you can hold down Control, Shift, and J, and the JavaScript console pops up. So here it says uncaught type error, undefined is not a function. So it doesn't understand document.write with 2 i's in it. So it says here it's on line number 9. So we can go back to Notepad++, we can go to line number 9, and we can see that we've used the wrong method or wrong function. So we can change that back to document.write with just 1 i, refresh the page, and it displays properly and the error is gone. So just remember, hold down Control, Shift, and the J keys on your keyboard to get your JavaScript console. And that's one way of checking for errors in your code. Okay, we'll go back to Notepad++, and I'm going to start a new file. I'll use my HTML template there. This one I'll just call variables and data types. Number 2. Save that, and I can get rid. I can change the title of the page. And I can get rid of this code here, but I can still keep my JavaScript script tag, so I can write my code in here. Okay, so if you've used a language like Python before, to create a new variable, you just basically type in the variable name or its identifier, and then the equal sign and whatever the variable is, so a string of text or a number, whatever it may be. In JavaScript, you need to use a keyword to declare and initialize a variable. So you can declare using the var keyword. So Notepad++ has automatically recognized var, changed it to bold, dark blue italics. So we can go var my variable equals, and then whatever data is being held in that variable. So this is the variable name or identifier, and this over here on the right hand side is the value. So it might be a number, 20, or it could be a string of text, like a message. Okay, so there are a number of different data types that we could use. We could use numbers, which in programming are known as integers, so whole number. We could use floats or floating point, so a number with dot decimal place, so like 12.8. We could use text, which are known as strings. We could use numbers, known as integers, floating points, or boolean, which are true or false. So there's only two possible answers: true or false, yes or no. Okay. We can also have things like lists and arrays. Later on, we'll get to that. But to start with, I'm going to make a variable which holds somebody's name. So use the var keyword, and we type in var first name equals, you can pick a random name, Joe. Okay, and then end that line with a semicolon. Then we could do var last name equals Smith. Okay, if it's a string, so if it's text, you need to put it inside quotation marks. If it's a number, you don't need to worry about those. But if it's a string, it needs to be inside quotation marks. An important thing to note with variable names or identifiers is that they can start with letters, and they can be uppercase, they can be lowercase, but you can't start with a number. So for example, you could have a variable name called first name 1 or first name 2, but you couldn't have a variable name called 1 first name. Okay, you could have first name with capital F at the beginning or lowercase. That doesn't matter. You can have underscores as well, but you can't have spaces. It has to be one word, and you can't start with a number. Okay, so that's something about variable names or identifiers. You also can't use existing words in JavaScript, such as the name of an existing function. You have to make new function names that don't already exist. Okay, another data type that we can use is an integer. So var number equals 5. Okay. And also, you can start with an underscore in your variable name. So you can have an underscore in a variable name, but you can also start with an underscore. That's fine. I'll just mention that as well. Okay. Now, variables can come in handy to store data or store information that we'll be using later on or we'll be referring to. So instead of writing a message like document.write Joe, like that, we can just instead refer to the variable first name. Okay, because this variable could be changed later on, and it can be updated wherever the variable is used in our web page. So it's best to use a variable. And now we can just go ahead and test this. I'll save it and go run in Chrome, and then we've got Joe as printed out there. Okay. The next thing we could try is we could try and print the number to the screen. So we'll run that in Chrome as well. Oops. And it prints the number there. Okay, so we can print our strings or we can print our integers. We can also use floats. So for example, 5.25. If we refresh that, that will also work. Okay, so we've got integers and floats. Now, to concatenate or to join strings together, we can use a comma. So if we want to join first name and last name together, we can write document.write first name, comma, last name. If we save that and run it, it prints out Joe Smith, but notice that there's no space here between the E and the S. If we want to add a space, we can simply put another comma in there and then an empty string. Oh, sorry, a string with a space. Okay, save that and go back. Refresh. Now there's a space there. So we can concatenate or join together a variable, another string, which in this case is just a space, and then a variable here. So it's printing Joe space Smith. Okay, we could do something like, instead of number, we could have age. We could have 25, and we can have first name, so Joe space Smith, comma, space is, space, comma, and then refer to the variable age, comma, and then another space, oops, another space, years old, full stop. Save that and run it. And we've got Joe Smith is 25 years old. So we've concatenated, we've joined a variable, a space in a string of text, another variable, which they're both string variables. We've got another string here is, and then an integer variable, and then more string text. Okay, so that's how we can concatenate. But what if we had something like Joe Smith said, comma, or Joe Smith said, I am 25 years old. And we save that and run it. What would happen? We get an error. And we can have a look at our JavaScript console, see what sort of information it provides. It tells us that there's a problem on line 13, uncaught syntax error, unexpected identifier. So if we go back, JavaScript's gotten a little bit confused because we've used a quotation mark here. Alright, we've started with a quotation mark here and ended it there, so we know that that's a string of text here. And we've got another one here, and it ends there. So it doesn't know what to do with this bit here, I am, and then it doesn't know what to do with this bit here, years old. So it's only recognizing these grey bits here as strings, and it doesn't know what to do with these other bits here. So that's where you need to use an escape key or an escape character to tell JavaScript to ignore those quotation marks and display them on the screen, just treat them as text. Okay, so if we had Joe Smith said, and we put a backslash in front of that one, and then a backslash in front of that one, save that and run it. It works exactly how we want it to work. So we've used a backslash as an escape character to tell Python to ignore this quotation mark and this quotation mark and just treat it as part of the string of text. Okay. Alright, so that's basically how to use variables. So we're using variables as a way, kind of like a container to store information that can be used over and over again in our program. So we've learned how to declare a variable and initialize it. And we've also learned how to use variables in document.write, so to show them up on the screen. We've learned how to use variables along with strings, so to concatenate or join them together. We learned how to use strings of text, integers, and also floats. And one last thing that we can do is we can declare our variable here. So we can call our variable first name, and then we can put later on. So we can just have a variable with nothing in it, and we can just get it ready to be used later on. And then later on we can use first name equals Joe. We'll test that and see how that works. Okay, undefined. What have we done? Okay. Oops, typo. So make sure that you're using uppercase when you need to, as it's case sensitive. There we go. Okay, so on line 9, we have declared the variable. We've given it a name or an identifier, but we haven't given it any value yet. On line 10, we've given it a value. Okay, so if you're going to declare and give a value, you can do var first name equals Joe, but you can't just have first name equals Joe. You do have to use the var keyword to set it up to begin with. Okay, so that's how to use variables and data types in JavaScript. Thanks for watching.